The contractions were 4 minutes apart when they told me to leave. Not my husband, not a nurse, his mother. She stood in the doorway of the hospital room, the one that Marcus had reserved for us, the one with the window overlooking the city. And she looked at me the way you look at something that doesn't belong to you. Calm, certain, final. This is a family matter now. You should wait somewhere else. I remember staring at her. My hands were gripping the bedrail. My body was doing something enormous and terrifying, and the woman who was supposed to be my mother-in-law was asking me to leave my own delivery room. I said, "I'm the one having the baby." She didn't blink. Marcus was behind her. He didn't say a word. That silence, that single moment where he chose to say nothing, I felt it like a door closing, quietly, permanently. My name is Emily Carter. I was 28 years old. I had been married to Marcus Whitfield for 3 years, together for 5. I had given up my apartment, my city, my career trajectory to move into his family's world, a world that had always been polite to my face and cold behind my back. I thought I understood them. I thought time would soften it. I was wrong about a lot of things that year. They let me back in before our daughter was born, 40 minutes later when a nurse firmly intervened. But the damage was already inside me like a splinter. Something had been revealed, and once you see something clearly, you can't pretend you didn't. We named her Rosie. She had Marcus's ears and my mother's stubborn little chin, and when they placed her in my arms, I cried so hard the room went blurry. In that moment, I told myself none of it mattered. The in-laws, the coldness, the silence. None of it mattered because we had her. But that was the thing about that family. The damage was never loud. It was patient. Marcus's mother, Catherine Whitfield, had a way of making you feel her disapproval without ever stating it directly. A look held half a second too long, a comment about how Emily does things differently than we do, a holiday where seating arrangements somehow always placed me slightly outside the circle. For 3 years, I had swallowed it, made excuses, told myself it was cultural, generational, just the way some families were. I had never once asked Marcus directly, "Does your family actually want me here?" Because I think, somewhere deep down, I already knew the answer might destroy me. It was 2 weeks after Rosie was born that Marcus's grandmother passed away, Eleanor Whitfield, 84 years old. Sharp until the very end, they said. She had never been openly cruel to me, which in that family almost felt like warmth. She would hold my hand sometimes at dinner and squeeze it, once, twice, for no reason. I used to wonder what she was communicating. I know now. She left behind a letter, handwritten, sealed, addressed not to Marcus, not to Catherine, but to me. The family didn't tell me immediately. I found out the way I found out most things in that house, by overhearing a conversation that stopped the moment I entered the room. Marcus's sister, Diane, to her mother. "She's going to find out anyway. Eleanor made sure of that." Catherine's voice, lower. "Let the lawyers handle it." A pause. Then, "She was always too soft. She should have just let it go." I stood in the hallway outside that kitchen for a long moment. Rosie was asleep in the nursery upstairs. The house smelled like sympathy casseroles and old flowers. I knew, standing there, that whatever was in that letter was going to change everything. I just didn't know yet how much of the past it was going to rewrite. The lawyers contacted me 4 days later. Not the family, not Marcus. A law office in the city, Hargrove and Associates, with a receptionist who spoke to me like she already knew more about my life than I did. "Mrs. Whitfield, we have a document from Eleanor Whitfield's estate addressed specifically to you. She requested it be delivered directly and privately." Marcus was in the other room when I took that call. I stepped into the bathroom, turned on the tap, and pressed the phone so hard against my ear that it left a mark. The appointment was Thursday. I didn't tell Marcus. I'm not proud of that decision, but I understood it instinctively, the way you understand before you can explain it that some information belongs to you first. Thursday came. I told him I had a postnatal checkup. He nodded without looking up from his laptop. That should have been its own answer. The law office was quiet and wood-paneled and smelled like old paper. A woman named Ms. Hargrove, 50s, no-nonsense reading glasses, placed the envelope in front of me on the table like it was something fragile, like she knew what was inside it. Maybe she did. I recognized Eleanor's handwriting immediately. Careful, deliberate, each letter shaped like it was meant to last. Dear Emily, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and I am glad for it. Not because I was ready, but because it means I no longer have to carry what I know alone. There are things my family has kept from you, things I should have told you before the wedding. I was a coward. I chose family loyalty over your right to know the truth, and I have regretted it every day since. I hope this letter finds you before too much more damage is done. I set the letter down. My hands were shaking. I picked it up again. Eleanor explained everything in that careful, deliberate handwriting. 5 pages, front and back. The truth was this. Marcus had been engaged before me. Not just engaged, married. Briefly, 14 months, to a woman named Serena, whom the family had adored, whom Catherine had chosen, whom Marcus had left not because he stopped loving her, but because she had refused to accept Catherine's involvement in every corner of their life. Serena had issued an ultimatum, her or his mother. Marcus had chosen his mother. And then, less than a year later, he had met me, and apparently I had been selected, consciously or not, because I seemed easier to manage, quieter, less likely to push back. Catherine saw in you, Eleanor wrote, what she had wanted all along, someone who would not challenge her place in Marcus's life. I do not say this to be cruel. I say it because you deserve to understand the shape of what you walked into. I sat in that office for a long time after I finished reading. Ms. Hargrove brought me water. She didn't say anything. I think she understood that there was nothing to say. The worst part wasn't the secret itself. The worst part was the memory that surfaced, unbidden, sharp. Our second date, Marcus telling me, "I love how easygoing you are. My family's going to love you." I had taken it as a compliment. Now I understood it had been a criteria. I drove home in silence. Rosie was with the nanny. Marcus was still at his laptop. He looked up this time. "How was the checkup?" I looked at my husband, really looked at him, and felt the specific grief of realizing you have been living inside someone else's plan. "Fine," I said. "Everything's fine." I spent 3 days pretending. I made dinner, I fed Rosie, I folded laundry and answered texts and smiled at the right moments. But something had fundamentally changed in the way I moved through that house. Like I had stepped outside the set of a play, and I could now see the scaffolding holding everything up. I started paying attention to things I had trained myself to overlook. The way Catherine called Marcus every single morning, not to chat, to debrief, to know his schedule, his mood, his plans, and the way Marcus answered, like a teenager checking in, not a 32-year-old man with a wife and a newborn. The way family decisions that should have been ours, where we spent holidays, how Rosie would be baptized, which school district we should consider, were somehow always already decided before Marcus brought them to me. I had thought his deference to his mother was cultural, devotion, love for family. Now I saw it for what it was, a pattern so old it had become invisible. I called my best friend Jess on a Tuesday afternoon while Rosie was napping. "I need to tell you something," I said, "and I need you to not freak out." She freaked out. "Emily, he had an entire wife, a whole marriage, and he never told you?" "He never told me." "And his family knew?" "His whole family knew." The silence on her end was the sound of someone recalibrating everything they thought they understood. What are you going to do? That was the question, wasn't it? I had Rosie. I had a life I had built inside this family's walls, a life that was real, even if the foundation had been laid in secrets. I loved Marcus, or I had loved the Marcus I thought I knew. The man in the letter, the one who chose his mother over his first wife, I was still figuring out what I felt about him. But the not telling, that was the part that kept surfacing. Not the past marriage. Humans have pasts, I understood that. The choice to hide it, the active, deliberate decision made not just by Marcus, but by an entire family to let me walk into that marriage without the information I needed to consent to it fully. That was not a mistake, that was a strategy. I went back to Eleanor's letter on the fourth night. I had read it 4 times. Each time I found something new. Near the end, she had written, "Serena tried to warn you. She sent a letter 2 months before your wedding. Catherine intercepted it. I did not know until after. By then, the wedding had happened, and I told myself the damage was done. I am ashamed of that reasoning now." I read that line 6 times. Serena had tried to warn me. There had been a letter 2 months before my wedding, and Catherine had taken it. I stood up from the kitchen table so fast the chair scraped the floor. Somewhere in this house, or somewhere in Catherine's house, there was a letter that had been written for me years ago. A woman I had never met had tried to protect me, and the woman who called herself my family had hidden it. I went upstairs. Marcus was asleep. I sat on the edge of the bed and watched him breathe and thought about the very first question you have to answer when a foundation cracks. Do you rebuild on it, or do you walk off the land entirely? I didn't know yet, but I knew I was done pretending I didn't feel the ground moving. I drove to Catherine's house on a Saturday morning. I didn't call ahead. She opened the door in a silk robe, coffee in hand, and for 1/2 second I saw something flicker across her face. Not guilt, exactly, more like the recognition of a moment she had known was coming. "Emily." She stepped back. "Come in." I didn't sit down. I stood in her entrance hall, the same one where I had smiled for 100 photographs, where I had hugged her at Christmas, where I had once genuinely tried to be her daughter-in-law, and I placed Eleanor's letter on her entry table. "I know about Serena," I said. "I know about the letter." She looked at the letter, then at me. "Eleanor had no right." "Eleanor had every right," I said. "I'm the one who had no rights in this situation. That's the entire point." There was a long silence. Catherine set her coffee down, and then, for the first time in 5 years, she dropped the performance. The posture softened, the careful face slipped. "We thought you'd end it, if you knew. We thought you'd run. Marcus loved you. We didn't want to lose him again." "So you decided for me," I said. "You decided what I was allowed to know about the person I was marrying. You decided I didn't deserve to make an informed choice." She didn't answer that, because there was no answer to that. I told Marcus that night, all of it, the letter, the meeting with the lawyers, the visit to his mother. He went very still, and then he did something I hadn't expected. He didn't defend his family. He didn't deflect. He put his face in his hands, and he stayed there for a long time. "I should have told you. I was afraid you'd leave. So you didn't give me any choice." Yes. That honesty, that bare, ashamed yes, was the first truly honest moment we had shared in I don't know how long, maybe ever. I'm not going to tell you I forgave him immediately. I'm not going to wrap this up neatly. What I will tell you is this. We went to therapy, both of us. Marcus also finally began going alone, to untangle a lifetime of being his mother's emotional territory. That work was slow. It was not linear. There were sessions that left me more broken than when I walked in. But there were also sessions where I watched my husband become, slowly, someone I could see clearly. Not the man his mother had shaped, not the man I had projected onto, just him. Rosie turned 1 in the spring. She took her first steps toward me in the kitchen, arms out, that ridiculous grin on her face. I found Serena, eventually. She was remarried, happy. We spoke once, briefly. She was kind. She said she hadn't blamed me, that she had understood I was also a victim of that family's management. That word, management. I think about it sometimes. And I think about Eleanor, a woman in her 80s who spent years carrying a secret that wasn't hers to keep, and who at the very end decided that truth mattered more than loyalty to a system that had never been fair. She addressed that letter to me, not to Marcus, not to the family. To me, because she knew what they had forgotten, that I was a person, not a selection, not a solution. A person. And I had spent long enough in that house forgetting it too. I'm Emily Carter, and I'm finally living a life that belongs to me.